have in my pocket the God of America. When this rings, everyone runs for it.
who want to ditch their passwords could soon be able to use electronic tattoos or even a pill to do the job. Motorola has come up with the tattoo, flexible electronic circuits that attach to your skin with a rubber stamp. To verify identity, users just place their smartphone near their tattoo. Motorola has also come up with computer chip pills. Once swallowed, they give off an electronic tracer that can verify the identity. These developments concern privacy advocates, as does this one. The search engine Yahoo announced it will now perform automated scanning and content analysis of all emails sent through Yahoo Mail. Users must agree to the new policy or close their accounts.
One privacy expert who's concerned about all this is Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and she joins us now from Washington. Dr. Albrecht, let's talk about Yahoo first. What exactly does Yahoo's new policy allow them to do?
Well, the policy says that any email that is sent or received through a Yahoo account can be scanned. And when they say scan, it's an automated scanning process, but it goes through and it looks for keywords, nouns, concepts, and then stores all of that information and analyzes it for advertising purposes or for what they call abuse protection. So what it means is that you will have an immense dossier of personal information based on the private emails that you write to other people.
Well, what alarms you the most about this kind of privacy invasion?
I think the most alarming aspect of this is that when people write email, we have this concept that you're putting something in an envelope, that it's a private correspondence. And the idea that they would be opening up the emails that we've simply entrusted them to deliver, actually reading them, this means that they could get access to information that you send to your doctor, your medical records, legal accounts. It could be your accounting, your tax returns. There's a whole lot of personal information that people share through email, and now all of that information is going to be in Yahoo's hands.
Well, let's go back a moment to those electronic tattoos that Motorola has come up with. Could this technology go beyond passwords to personal information like you were just mentioning?
Well, I think the concern about all of these things converging, we've got technologies that are all designed to track. And if you develop a tattoo that's designed for authentication purposes, and that tattoo is emitting a radio frequency signal that can be tracked, then what you're going to find is that that signal is going to become your authentication. It's going to track you. So to get into, to start your car, your ignition, to open your front door, to turn on your computer, to get a dial tone on your phone. And ultimately, I have to say, as a Bible-believing Christian, that I have some real concerns about this being a mark on the skin that's actually transmitting a number that down the road could definitely be used to buy and sell and really to perform just about every other action in society.
That's a good point. Well, what's the danger when people trade privacy for convenience?
Well, I think anytime you hear the word smart, look out, or anytime you hear the word efficient, look out, because I think we're being lulled into a sense of almost laziness, that we want everything to be given to us. When Google recently decided to consolidate all of its privacy policies, what they said is it's too hard for people to keep track of where to go and what the traffic looks like, so we'll just do all that work for you. And I think if we're not careful, we're going to wake up one day in a society where they're doing the work for us and watching us in our own kitchens, in our own bathrooms, and everywhere we go.
I have in my pocket the God of America.
It's already available and it's pretty widespread. There are apps where you can use your face to log in. There are stores you can go into and pay for things using just your face. So this technology has, in recent years, become so accurate that it's possible to recognize people even in sort of grainy CCTV footage from a funny angle with odd lighting. A couple of years ago that would have been inconceivable. It just wasn't possible. But new machine learning techniques have made it possible for computers to recognize people's faces even more accurately than a person can. The big obstacle here, obviously, is the Big Brother element. When I saw this stuff in China, I thought it was really impressive, really, going to have a big impact. But it's also a little bit creepy, a little bit kind of dystopian. So if it's going to come to Europe, come to the US in the same sort of level, I think that they're going to have to be some sort of trade-off, and people are going to have to see the convenience as so great that they're willing to give up a little bit more of their privacy.
Where I think this technology is potentially heading is a few scenarios. First of all, if we can use the implant as a personal key to log in to any device we want to log into, all our digital logins where we use passwords and email and PIN codes today. And if we can do this in an encrypted fashion, using open encryption standards, this has the potential to allow me to reclaim a lot of my digital privacy. And this is what I'm actively exploring to do with this technology. I want to have an encryption key in my implant where wherever I log in, I have control over the data, and then it's my choice with whom I share the data.
There are the other prophetic signs in the scripture. Daniel 12. God speaking to Daniel. Daniel, shut up the book that you're writing until the end of time. That's a very important phrase. Until the end of time, the last days on the earth, when knowledge shall explode and men shall run to and fro. We are that generation that's had the knowledge explosion. From the Garden of Eden until the 1900s, men rode horses, just as King David and Julius Caesar. Communication had not changed much. Medicine had not changed much. But in that 100-year block from the 1900s till now, communication has become so extreme that you can't keep up with it. I have in my pocket the God of America. When this rings, everyone runs for it. When you lose it, you pick up another phone and try to find it. If you get lost, this will tell you how to get home. This is a camera. You can read books, magazines. This is a calculator. This is an amazing piece of equipment. If you'd have told my father just 50 years ago this was coming, he said the world will never see it. But this is a sign of the knowledge explosion.
I just want to ask how many people here currently have a biometrically enabled smartphone on their body or in their pocket? Okay, almost everybody. Wait, keep your hands up. I'm not done. I have more than one question. How many of you use that biometric to unlock your phones? Keep your hands up. Okay, good. All right, panel. Wait, keep your hands up. I got 2 more questions. Now, keep your hand up if you use biometrics for some other application besides just unlocking your phone. Wow, that's pretty good. And so now one more thing. How many people use their biometrics at least 5 times a month? At least 10 times a month? Keep your hands up. 20 times a month. Okay, so this is really astounding. For those of you sitting in the room, it's probably not that astounding. If I'd asked that question 2 years ago, maybe half the hands would have been up. If I'd asked the question 4 years ago, probably none of the hands would have been up. And that is really amazing to those of us who have been around this industry. I like this slide because it demonstrates how rapidly that change has happened. We've basically gone from 0 to 500 different types of biometric smartphones that are currently available on the market. So just to kind of give you a brief history.
I was one of the builders of the European mobile industry. I knew nothing at all about biometrics and not very much about identity until about 2012. Some would argue I don't know too much about it now. When I came into this market, it was obvious that biometrics were the future. And so we blundered with enormous enthusiasm into banks, healthcare organizations, all sorts of enterprises, confident that biometrics, that they were just aching to use biometrics because of its undoubted quality. And after a while, we realized that that as soon as we opened our mouths, the room was filled with an antique smell. That what was happening was that we were touching upon an ancient nerve, that somehow we were coming in on the back end of a really foul reputation, that something had happened way before our arrival in the market that had poisoned the reputation of biometrics for a long time. And that what we didn't realize was that when we walked out of the room at first, the guys who we'd left behind went, ha, 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 look at these guys. They think they can sell biometrics to us. We'd have to be mad to buy that. Something dreadful seemed to have happened to the reputation of biometrics in the mid-noughties, which was still hanging around until about 2 or 3 years ago. And the combination of a new generation of technology, of Touch ID, and just the march of time finally seems to have blown that smell away. And now, actually, we've got a real market ahead of us. But it's a very strange thing to walk into a place which has recently been poisoned.
And I think the change I'm seeing in the industry is people beginning to actually embrace that model and move it forward.
Yep, I would agree with all of these folks. The only addition that I would make is just the capacity that we find in the mobile devices, right? The sensors that are always with us, the compute power that's always with us, the connectivity, back to the server and the applications that we're accessing on device, I think changed the game from surveillance to security. Right? So biometrics for a long time was about surveillance. And as we moved to security on mobile, both the need went way up, the pain point went way up, but also the capacity to solve that problem using kind of devices that we purchase on our own and we upgrade every year to 2 years. Is really kind of, I think, what opened it up, and Touch ID, probably no better example than that. And now you see the number of fingerprint devices is probably the most blatant example.
So as we kind of move on from a bit of the past, I always find it sort of interesting to kind of do a exhalation about what problems you had in the past, so we can talk a little bit about where we are now and moving on to the future. So, as I mentioned in the presentation, Toby just touched on it, the introduction of Touch ID was really a tipping point in the industry in a serious way, and it really heralded what I consider to be a new age, a new era of biometrics. And all of these people here on this panel have some experience in that mobile realm. So I wonder, when you talk about where we are now, like, how do you characterize the era that we're in, if you will? What do you think have been the most significant accomplishments or advancements really since Touch ID was introduced in the last 3.5 years? And so what are the challenges relative to that shift that we're seeing right now?
Maxine, could I cut across you just 1 second? Because there's one question which I think associated with that, which we need to address, is why does anyone in this room care? Why are you all sitting here talking about biometrics? I think this is the most important session of the entire conference, because this whole conference is about identity, and identity is about being able to assert attributes repeatedly about the same person. And identity is meaningless if it isn't the same person appearing time after time. Well, the only way in which you can determine that it's the same person, the basic fabric of an identity, is authentication, because otherwise different people can present and the whole thing is destroyed. A lot of the conversation that's been going on in different parts of this conference have all been about the device. So actually, there's been a lot of discussion about how in future we won't have identities at all. Our handsets, our mobile devices will have identities, and we will be merely appendages of our mobile devices. That actually identity will belong to this, not to me. Now, that's not okay. So the only way in which we can genuinely assert in a repeatable, persistent, reliable, and secure way our own identities will be via biometrics. In my view, there is no other secure way. In the old days, we used to do it by means of something we know, but the current era of cybersecurity, and this returns to your message, Maxine, the current world of cybersecurity, which doesn't look like the world of cyber attacks, that doesn't look like the world of 5 years ago, has now made something you know an untenable way of asserting your identity. So biometrics are the only way in which you can actually as the only foundation upon which you can build a digital identity. That's why we're all here. This is the
biometrics puts the person back in the transaction. And quite frankly, if it's just you in the transaction, friction goes away, because all the things that we do today in the guise of security are because we don't know who's actually using the device. So we'll send you an SMS code, we'll send an email, or we call and we'll ask you for the last 4 of your social and your mother's maiden name, and it goes on and on and on, because you don't know who I am. But if you put the person back in the transaction, it becomes very easy. And so, we've all used Touch ID. It's convenient. If you look at what, everybody here has different technology. If you look at what Toby and the team are doing with Iris, with Eye and Face, it's simple. I mean, there's not a person on the planet today that can't take a selfie, right? I have 3 boys, and it's the first thing they do every morning is take an Instagram or something and send it to their friends. It's so easy to do. So we're actually changing the paradigm. I'm actually fascinated by the fact that we're actually beginning to increase security and decrease friction. Digital is new. Physical has been around for millions of years. The digital paradigm is new, and we're finally starting to learn what it means to create trust online. And it's not passwords, as you all can see from recent news. It's about putting that person somehow back into that transaction and then doing it on an ongoing and continuous basis.
Can I ring in a bell, though? Because there's one thing that was just said that I do disagree with. Easy is absolutely fundamental. In fact, if security isn't easy, it isn't secure. Frictionless can mean not demanding any effort, but frictionless sometimes is taken to mean invisible and instant. I actually increasingly disagree that you want security, you want authentication to be invisible. There are a number of different data points that suggest that if you make it invisibly easy and quick and almost invisible, to get into really sensitive data, or to pay people a lot of money, or to do things that matter, it scares the bejesus out of people because they think that they're not being protected. It's essential to make it easy, but you need a moment of ceremony. So this word frictionless can sometimes mean low cognitive load, but it can sometimes mean zero ceremony. And I think zero ceremony security will increasingly be rejected by consumers.
So he did say beforehand that he was going to start an argument, so he's doing it. I didn't say invisible, I said frictionless, right? So they're different. And so for me, it's about being able to quickly access my bank account. I'm on my mobile phone, I'm boarding an airplane, I want to see have I money in my account when I land to buy a toy for my kid, or I want to approve some expenses for some of my team. It doesn't mean that it's doing it before I make the decision to do so, but I need to be able to do it quickly. And I don't want to have to go fish out a token, type in some 8-digit number into another device, get it wrong, wait, that's friction to me.
You want to jump in?
So you bring up maybe you're not going there, maybe you are, but it's a conversation that for over 10 years now, when I present, I often start off with a slide that says, identity is the new money, okay? I see Deborah Birch actually is using it in a book since.
Did he give you credit for that?
Well, I actually don't know where, no, I don't think he did, but he doesn't need to, because I think a number of people have been using it. So you
stole it from somewhere else, okay.
No, I don't think so, but I didn't steal it from somebody else. I had their permission, but I don't know if they stole it from somebody else. But if you think about it, today, I don't give money. If you go back 100 years, I would have money with the mercantile and credit. I would have money at the sawmill. I'd have money at the livery stable for my horses, right? I mean, you had credit one-to-one. We don't do that anymore. I bank with a bank or 2 banks, and then they establish a network where these merchants, these providers of service, rely on them to pay me, and then they authenticate me as part of that, and they manage my money. We have the opposite problem with identity online today. I'm giving my identity to Google. I'm giving it to Apple. I'm giving it to, well, I don't give it to Facebook, but I'm giving it to, Microsoft. I'm giving it to my company. I'm giving it to a ton of people. I'm proliferating my data. And we talked about earlier, Toby made the point that his biometrics are private to him, and that's good, and that's the right way. But today, with passwords and usernames, we're proliferating it, and we need to adopt a model where only I can authenticate my data, and somebody that I trust does that. So there's a great business, and there's been a great business for 20 years, for an identity provider to work together with these other parties to create that bank, that identity bank. I worry more about, I bank with USAA, right? Their privacy statement, their privacy statement for face and voice is 4 lines long, where USAA, with your permission, will collect your face and your voice data, we'll use it for authentication, we won't give it to anybody else ever, and if you ask us to delete it, we'll do it in 7 days. 4 lines. Now find the privacy statement for Facebook. If you can get it in 4 pages, you're doing very, very well, right? It's deliberately obfuscated. So if we take that approach in the market, then it's a very simple thing, right? And so I think, as we go forward, there's a business for these identity banks to assert my identity on my behalf. And I worry more about Google surveilling me, quite frankly. They know more about what I do every day than my bank does, right? And Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and all these people. And so that's where we have a challenge. Not with the biometrics. So.
Can I just say one thing quickly? Because I just want to break it down really simply to answer your question. It depends on the application. It depends on the company you're dealing with. There's no one answer to that question. But biometrics can be generated for one-time tokens and thrown away. They can be stored on your device. They can be stored in the cloud. They can be, it's data. There's nothing, you can store that data any way you want. You can protect it any way you want. So it's entirely... No. Okay, I'm not saying you. I'm saying that it's a piece of data that is managed and stored in different ways, and there's no predefined way. And so, yes, you have to be careful about that. Right. You mean in terms of the customer applications, because we're all doing this on our phones. Right. Okay, who wants to take that one?
I'll go first because...
You don't can take that on. You did a survey.
Yeah, otherwise...
Survey says...
No, so I agree. The probably most prevalent in use today is fingerprint because it's on a lot of phones. But from our deployments around the world, and we have many of them, they're moving towards... There's no one biometric that works for everybody because it's not on every phone or doesn't work in all conditions. So I would say the primary ones are finger, face, and you've got 2 providers of good face matching technology here today. You have voice, you have iris. The new Samsung Galaxy S8 has a very slick, if you've seen it, the iris recognition. Again, it's device-based. What you're going to see is more and more innovation. You're going to see electrocardiogram as you're holding the phone. It can create a circuit across your heart. You're going to see advances in everything from, like I said, iris already, but you make it, well, I don't want to give away any secrets here, but you have face, you'll have combined with other things on your face. So you're going to see continuous innovation in that space. And I think we're moving to the point where there's different ways to authenticate humans depending on what device is available. Fingerprint will always be there, but in cars, you're not going to be touching something. It'll be voice, as you're driving, because people are used to speaking. Sitting in front of a smart TV, it'll probably be face or iris or iPrint or something like that. So there's no one. I think there's a whole plethora coming, but fingerprint did kind of start it for the consumer.
Fingerprint sensors were just cheap and easy to put on phones. That's kind of why they started.
I would argue that faces are going to be the next big thing. We already know there's going to be a face scanner in the iPhone 8. The reason why faces are going to be huge is that the sensors are ubiquitous. You've got an issue. Where are the sensors? For face, the answer is everywhere, because every single personal device has a front-facing camera. The second reason is that it's, from a usability point of view, it just doesn't get simpler. Earlobes, for example, are an awful problem because you feel like a complete idiot going and shoving your phone out here, and it's also very difficult to align. So from a usability point of view, earlobes are awkward. The third reason for faces is there's enormous informational complexity in a face. And by doing what we do, for example, which is to illuminate the face, you can add further complexity. That enables you to discover things about the face. It enables you to protect it against liveness attacks in a way that is impossible now with voice and becoming increasingly difficult now for fingerprints.